Welcome back. Just to remind people that if you are interested in steampunk and Victoriana, please visit my online shop. Links are in the description, where you will find an amazing array of all things steampunk and technological. From the NetNet Throbwell Kitchen Timer Kit, which contains everything you need to build your very own working kitchen timer, no special skills or equipment required, through picture frames to decorative gauges, and there's even a working gauge that's also a kit, to the bigger machines that I make to order. All sorts of things. Thank you very much. Let's get on with the nightmare. I took the regulator to pieces and put it back together again, and it now seems to work, which is brilliant. And there it is. And I've tried it on a bit of paper, and it seems to work beautifully. Now there's more pressure to force the black ink out. So, moment of truth, I have Victoria's head and her eyelids. Wish me luck. I'll leave that to dry and see what it looks like. Everything's painted. It's the next day and it's dry. If you remember back to yesterday, this is the Indian ink or China ink or something other. What I did after it's sprayed, I sprayed it with a layer of clear primer plastic, just as a sort of varnish to stop this smudging off, because it was quite delicate, I found. Then I did the eyelids, which all went a little bit wrong. I couldn't get this spray to coat them evenly, so what I did in the end was to try and spray them lightly with Painter's Touch multi-purpose black paint, and that didn't work. I put too much on, so then I went back and tried to unspray them with that, the porcelain paint, until I've sort of got them roughly right. I mean, I believe that makeup, eyeshadow and things can be different on eyelids and eye sockets. I forgive the nomenclature, but I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm hoping that this will look okay. Also, it should be pretty tough considering it's all proper paint and there's no water based. So, next job, I remember at the top of the neck with these little, all the spaces and bits and pieces in it, it was too wobbly. So I've redrawn it on 3D design and extended a couple of these bits and reduced that. And also, if you remember, the front of this used to stick really quite a long way forward, and I think that could have got in the way of the mechanisms for the eyes. So I shortened that as well, and here they are. We have the bearing holder thing one side, and the other side, and a super improved one of these where I've shortened this bit and made it lower and made it narrower, so hopefully that will now work. Sado alert. What did you dream about last night? Well, I had a dream where I was feeding this linkage through the control hall on the end of this servo. Great times. How fabulous to be dreaming about this. I'm not quite sure what that says about me, but anywho, let's get on. I've got the eyelids in, and I'm very pleased with that. I've got the linkage done up. My dream came true, literally. And I'm really pleased with the look of those. I've managed to match the colour fairly well, but that looks fantastic. Really pleased. Next job, I think, is to close the eyelids to allow more access from the back. And now what I need to do is to reassemble the eyeballs, get them back in. And if you remember back to the last video, these are the supports for the eyeballs, because in the back of each eyeball there's a universal joint, a Lego universal joint, which means the eyeballs can either look up and down or left and right, but not rotate. That would be rather odd. And I support them on these. And I glued them in last time, which meant I couldn't really get them apart easily, and I'm not even going to try and get them back together because it's very, very fiddly. Well, it's much easier if I can push them in the side and then push these in from the back into the eyeball once it's in position. Now, I've changed my mind. Having rifled through the box a couple of times, I just tapped it with a hammer and it broke the super glue adhesion, and I can just push it through, and it's left it slightly stiffer, which is even better, so that's good to know. Excellent. That's not bad. I've got both the eyeballs in. I've got the backs of the, zoom in a little bit, got the bits of Lego stuck in the side. I've got the central bit back on its pivot, so it's all going together pretty well. Pleased about that. I'm pleased also that I didn't paint the eyeballs, because any touching between the eyeball and the eyelid, inside the eyelid, would have scratched it off, especially considering rapid eye movements and things. So really pleased with that idea. It's so nice to reassemble them. You just slide the rounded, all these Lego parts have slight radiuses on all the sort of edges, corners, so slip that in, it just lines itself up, and because it's the cross, it only goes in one way round, and just lining the socket on the back of the eye up roughly, the drive shaft just slots in perfectly. I'm so pleased. So now both eyes are in. Now you can see them moving around a bit, and I'll do the looking up and down bit, get that fixed in. Well, the eye mechanism is all back together, so that's great. What I'm going to work on now is the mouth mechanism. I'm so pleased. Here's the little the insert that has the solenoid on the top of it that opens and closes the mouth. Well, it opens the mouth and the spring closes it again. And I'm so pleased that I worked out that this could just slot. There's a couple of slots here. It just pushes in, and what's great is you can assemble everything else, and there's still room for this to push in. I sprayed underneath so that it is black when she opens her mouth. You don't see anything inside. Where's her jaw gone? I don't know. And also properly fixed on 2 wires to the solenoid that are long enough to fit down inside all over the place. And this time I was very sensibly and mature and decided to use a colour that I hadn't already used. So I've got all these other ones that are going to end up down at the bottom, and it really does help to know what's what. So I'll get the mouth together now. This is the jaw, this is the mouth. So that when the mouth opens and closes, if you look inside, it'll just be dark. What that means though is that as this snaps shut, as a previous video, I was trying to make the mouth open and close really quietly, and realised that I needed to put a little bit of felt. I'm going to use white felt this time, just in case you see it from outside the head. It won't show up so much if you get a few little fluffy bits, but I found that really did quieten everything down. So I'll glue that on with some super glue and then trim it. I love it when a plan comes together. So that now has slotted down inside the back of her head, and there's the felt bit that hopefully will stop the cracking, and there's the back of her throat, so to speak, and then her jaw. Look at that, that just fits beautifully. Oh yeah, and that's nice and quiet as well. Brilliant. Now to make the pivot for her jaw, again, so that I can take things to pieces, so important, I used 2 brass rods that fit into 2 holes. I wonder if I can sit there. Oh, that's perfect. Right, they just push in like that so that I can get them apart. They don't have to be moulded in, and they can be removed. Then I've got 2 M3 washers. An M4 thread, a nice long one that someone had very kindly put on one of these sharing forums, and and make it slightly larger to account for the slight oversize of 3D printed objects by sort of 0.2 millimeters or something, and then just subtracting it from wherever I want an M4 thread. That's amazing. Look at that. I am getting very excited. This is looking absolutely fantastic. Oh, that is just amazing. Oh, I'm so pleased I dared to do the painting yesterday that I've been putting off. That looks amazing. I'm glad I didn't put any more on either. I'm pleased. I think that's about right. And the mouth, look, it's just silent. Well, silent as can be expected. It opens and it's dark inside. Oh, fantastic. Right, what's the next thing to do? I suppose it's going to be to attach her to her neck and get the mechanism in here. So let's do that. And this is another interesting point, because I've got all these wires that need to travel down. They mustn't bang into the mechanisms or anything, because that'll spoil it, stop it working properly. And then they've got to come down inside the neck. Originally I designed it with 2 or 3, there you can see inside, 3 circular hook things that the wires could run down, but that means the wires having to end up about here, and I don't think they will. So I'm going to wait until I've got this big gear and this one in. We'll put it together, and it's so good not having the top of her head on, because I'll be able to clearly see where everything goes. So let's assemble this now. I've pushed the 2 bearings in either side, like so, and the idea is that everything is held together by the super improved thing that pushes the micro switch that sits in there. And that's great, because again, one screw, loosen that, and then everything can slide out. Nothing has to grip firmly. These don't. They just push onto this hexagonal piece of brass. That just slides on. You don't need any friction to hold them in place, because it's all provided by tightening this screw. And it's hexagonal, so that the gear, which is the really stiff bit, I think I might file that out a bit, it always seems to get stuck in that when I'm putting it together. It's really stiff. It really doesn't have to be, because her chin, because the pivot point is here, it's far more weight and mass in front, so it's always tending to fall down, which is quite useful, because it means that the slack's always taken up, and then the hexagonal bit fits through her neck to 2 hexagonal holes at the back, so that basically as the gear turns her head lifts up and down. So let's work on that. First thing I need to do is to calculate how long this rod needs to be and then cut it down. So I think the easiest way is with a ruler. Pull that out of the way. So, oops, that, don't think there's that's by accident, that's 90 millimeters, okay. So I could use hacksaw, but I've just broken my last junior hacksaw blade. I think I'm going to use the lathe, because I want the ends nice anyway. Put the hex rod, and I'll try and keep my fingers out of the way. In fact, I think I'd turn the end of that over. That's quite nice. No, it isn't. Let's do it properly. So we'll clamp that in there. And the lovely thing about hex, working with hex, is that it's hexagonal, and the chuck is a 3-jaw chuck, so centres up perfectly. Now I need a different tool, because I want to part this off. So let's turn that around, and this is a quick release chuck. So put an Allen key there, and it just lifts off. The lovely thing about that is you can adjust the height of each tool. So as it says, quick release, I am going to use that, because I just want to make sure that it's completely flat. 90. Lovely. Well, the first thing to do is to replace the micro switch, and the micro switch, if you remember, tells the Arduino where the neck is. Let's make sure I put this the right way around. So when you first switch it on, just in case you, what am I doing? Oh, it's those two. Just in case it was switched off and not in the right position, the Arduino has no idea where the neck is. It obviously needs to know, so it can then calculate all the moves that it needs to make. Is that right? No. If the micro switch is not being touched, then it will switch the motor in clockwise or anti-clockwise, I can't remember. Turn it until the micro switch is being touched, and then the Arduino knows that's the 0 point, can set its registers or whatever to 0, and then can do all the rest of the moves from that point. In the knowledge, look at that, don't need screws or anything. Perfect. With the knowledge that it's in the right place. Right. Next thing then, I suppose, is to put, oh actually no, what I can do now, here's one of the spacers. If memory serves, that goes in there. Look at that. I mean, all these measurements are done through experimentation, tweaking it by 0.1 of a millimetre until it just slides beautifully into there. And because the bearings are pushed in from the inside, they're now captive, so they can't come out. Well, I got it through. So there it is, going in that side, passes through the different sections inside, past the gear, and then out to the other side. And the whole thing can be held in place simply by tightening one screw, not too tight. The stepper motor inside here, small gear, will now drive this one, which will slow it down and give it more torque, more power. I now need to add, let's just turn that around. You can see why it was important to shorten this lever. The original version could have banged into the back of that, which is the thing that works the eyeballs. I think that's just going to miss the neck. It's ever so close. I realised that when I was looking at it, designing it on 3D Builder, that it was. But what I can do now is to tighten this. There. But I'll make it a little bit more because I want that to, that's it. So that was the click from the micro switch, so it knows when it's down that that's down. Now, next job is to sort out how to get all these wires safely down into the bottom of the neck without touching anything. And I think the biggest gap, because we've got the stepper motor down there, is here. Lots going on at the front, so it's here. So I'll have a think about that. Cable management was an exciting topic. What I thought I'd do for the solenoid, the mouth solenoid, because the wires were going to get in the way of the eyes and everything, I will design some sort of support, but for now I've just used some of this low temperature kids hot melt glue gun glue. The good thing about this is it melts at a much lower temperature than the other one, and I can't remember what it is, but it means if they get it, or when they get it all over their hands, it does burn, but not very badly, opposed to the other sort, which really is nasty stuff. Well, it's very good for sticking. Also, I'm going to do is to group all the wires together using some of this, which is very useful. It's let's see what I'm doing. It's a spiral, flexible spiral type thing that does that. Now this is the small size, and I know from experience it ends up being so rigid. I want some flexibility, but I do want all these to be kept together, so I'm going to use the next size up, which I can probably just thread it through, but the idea normally is that you wrap the spiral around like that, and that'll just hold them all together. There's also room for all the joins in there, and then that should enable me to direct them down this eel in the corner. See how it goes. I'm very pleased with that. what I've done is to use some of the low temperature hot melt glue just down there to stick the end of that spiral tube. That means that as the head lifts up and down, these wires have got plenty of room to move around in the top, even pull them up a little bit more, and they're not going to touch anything else. Right, so we've done that. Next thing is this, which turns the head from left to right. Now if you remember, which you will because it's probably earlier in this video, although I'm getting very confused, I'm going to leave the Lazy Susan bearing silver. I could spray it, but I'm going to try and leave it silver. It's metal, it could be steel, mild steel in Victorian times. I also need to spray this up because that's going to be seen, so I'm going to spray that up brass. And as I mentioned before, I'm not happy with how wide this comes out. It looked okay on the drawings, but if you think about the size of her head on top of all that, I think it's just too big. I think this needs to just be stepped at about that much. That step's okay, but just to have that step, I think. Just been spraying up it's really the only piece that's going to be seen of this, that bit that holds the motor that turns from left to right, are the edges. Little step as well. It's much better to have something obvious like a step than trying to get different layers to line up, because they never quite do and it looks like it's an accident rather than intentional. So I'm just spraying the edges of that. In the immortal words of Freddie Mercury, "Don't stop me now, I'm having such a good time." I love putting all this sort of thing together. All the hard work happens and you just go on and on and on with nothing really to show for it. A bit like decorating when you want to wallpaper a wall and you have to peel all the old stuff off, clean up all the rubbish, fill in all the holes, do this, do that. If you do it, you don't notice it. If you don't do it, you do notice it. And it's a bit like that, sort of. I don't know why this isn't focusing. There. So what I'm going to do now, while the rest of the paint is drying, is the very exciting task of putting these copper rivets into the holes. And again, through experimentation, I know that the hole is the right size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick them in. Brilliant. Very pleased with that. Looks really nice. Right, we've stained the pieces of wood. I've fixed that gear onto the first bit. Now, a little bit of a puzzle because I can't remember quite how I did it, but right, this screw isn't long enough to go through that and then to have a dome nut on, so I need to find a slightly longer screw. How exciting, the wig's arrived and it looks fantastic. Because her head is so slippery, it keeps sliding off, so I can't really stretch it over. I need to work that out, but I'm really pleased with that.